Well, the recent $230 million missile test that the United States has performed in the Pacific using a variety of missiles is very telling, given the recent events that we see developing both in China and the Spratly Islands contesting, as well as the Middle East and its Syrian war operations. What's timely, of course, is that this was conducted on the day in which the day after the Russian airliner was mysteriously taken down and crashed, which may have been a terrorist attack. It may not have been, but it was very mysterious, so that's still developing. And that tells us psychologically the United States military saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate its power and influence, or at least present a psychological warfare platform to try and convince its enemies and adversaries that it really had more power than it does. And the United States typically does that. Its military brass is so hell-bent on communicating to its Russian adversaries in particular that its missile technology is the absolute end-all technology that can determine any war. They saw this as an opportunity in which to play it. Now, from a psychological warfare perspective, I see this as a massive bluff, as just a lot of feather puffing, and really doesn't have a lot of substance because the technology is not there. The Russian technology, we know, is far superior. So this claim that an elaborate $230 million missile test was conducted with state-of-the-art technology really doesn't cut the muster. It seems to be really just a standard test, and they're inflating it to make it look a lot more lethal than it potentially is. So I wouldn't give too much credibility to it. I think it's a posturing. I think it's the United States military brass trying to bluff its way into an offensive, superior position against Russia in the Syrian campaign that it's operating. And it's doing that by trying to show it's got the technology that can be potentially given to the Ukrainian forces for protecting any offensive maneuvers against the Donbass region and its Russian supporters, as well as communicating that this technology could be deployed into Turkey for developing a no-fly zone and using these missiles to cover any ISIS, terrorist, Takfiri, mercenary forces that the U.S. is funding and training in trying to use to destabilize Assad. So these missiles are really a test to try and put that into the conversation that Russia needs to beware, and also China, of course, and its Spratly Islands. But what needs to be done, of course, is the bluff needs to be called, and I think Russia and Iran and Syria are already well aware of this, and they need to simply communicate to the United States that if you send 3,000 American troops into Syria, the Russian coalition will not be held responsible for any deaths that may result, because these troops are not being sent as anything other than mercenary human shields. These American troops are being sent in to be used as human shields for the ISIS mercenary Takfiri forces that the U.S. is trying to use to destabilize Assad. And that's a potential trap. It's an attempt to try and goad Russia, I think, into maneuvers and bombings that can kill a lot of American troops for the purposes of triggering a larger U.S. action, a larger U.S. NATO proclamation, and a demand for the United Nations resolution to create a no-fly zone because of the death of the American troops. And so Russia needs to be prepared for that by checkmating that move, by being very transparent and being very upfront and saying under no circumstances will any U.S. troops or U.S. advisors be permitted within certain geographical boundaries. And if any are, then they will be killed possibly as enemy combatants and according to the laws of war. So that's the maneuver that I think Russia and Syria and Iran need to be prepared for, and I think China sees the development of these missiles as a threat to its own Spratly Island and other territorial interests. But things are certainly heating up. and I would not be surprised if this airliner that was taken down, it is determined to be a component of the Israeli Mossad Zionist operations to try and trigger a greater inflation of the conflict there. But time will tell, and we'll see how it develops.